I love you.
What is going on, everybody? This is Mike Hughes, and you're listening to the Shy Kid and Everything Chicago Sports Related Podcast, brought to you by Mike on the Mic, the OG pod that we'll never give up on. But with that being said, man, we got a lot of conversations tonight. I'm really excited to really get into. Obviously, the NFL Combine has been the biggest conversation all week long. Though even last week, leading up to this week, it's been the conversation figuring out what's going to happen with Caleb Williams, what's going to happen with Michael Penix, what's going to happen with all these different quarterbacks that are available right now. Let's get right into it, though. Talk about our biggest takeaways from the Combine. My favorite one was Caleb Williams confirmed that pigeons are not real. He said there's something involving the government. But in all seriousness, man, I mean, Caleb Williams was in amazing spirits, I felt, throughout the entire Combine. And we really got to see the, I guess you could say, PR version of Caleb Williams. You know, everybody talks about the ego. Everybody talks about, you know, he doesn't care. He's this. He's a bad teammate. He's bad that. But you really got to get a chance to hear from Caleb actually speaking, not in a season, not having to, you know, just ignore the media. He got a chance to speak vocally. He got a chance to be himself. He expressed that he's very open to the idea of being a Chicago legend. It's very important to him to leave a legacy behind. And he sees guys like Michael Jordan. He sees guys like Walter Payton, you know, kind of pave that way for the Chicago Bears and for Chicago sports in general. And it's one of those conversations to where, you know, you're stepping up to the challenge, and it's big shoes to fill. You know what I mean? The last time anybody filled those shoes, it was Walter Payton over 30, 40 years ago. You know what I mean? So with that being said, man, we took away a lot. The big one for me was Marvin Harrison Jr. Not quite sure what happened with him. Did not speak to the media. He was there in the Combine. He was talking to teams, wasn't participating in any drills. Neither was Caleb Williams. And there was the whole rumor last night that Caleb Williams wasn't willing to give up any of his medical records to teams, or disclose any information or take any exams. But it was voted today that, you know, it's not the case. He's only doing it for teams that are meeting with him via the Chicago Bears, the Washington Commanders, teams that are on his list, teams probably likely in the top 3, top 5. And you know what I mean? Even that's maybe scarce on the top 5. So, you know, I think that makes sense. You know what I mean? He has no idea why the Kansas City Chiefs would want his medical records for absolutely no reason, picking 32 overall. But with that being said, let's break it down, man. We're going to have a conversation tonight that I think is fun. You know what I mean? Like we're just having conversation. We're free flowing. So if you're here for, you know, solidified arguments only, and you don't want to have a conversation, maybe be open a little bit, have some fun, it's perfectly okay. But tonight we're going to be talking about, what if Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears don't end up with Justin Fields or Caleb Williams? That's the conversation. Do you trade Justin Fields and the number 1 overall pick for a king's ransom? That's really where a lot of fans are skeptical of right now. Dan Orlovsky was very vocal about it today. He said, I don't want Justin Fields or Caleb Williams. They would be wise if they went after Jaden Daniels. Now, we can have a conversation right now about that and how that can come into fruition. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to my boy Tony. Go Tigers. You know, he's starting the big age today. I don't know how old Tony's turning today, but he's old. But no, in all seriousness, man, Jaden Daniels, let's say for sake of argument, is the Chicago Bears franchise quarterback. They have number 1 and number 9. How can that happen? Now, let's say, presumably, you move on from Justin Fields in the next coming weeks before free agency kicks off, before everything kind of turns into the NFL draft in April. It's officially March. It's March 1st, going on March 2nd. So we have to figure these things out very quickly if you're Ryan Poles. Let's say you trade Justin Fields for a 2nd or 3rd round pick, whether that's to Atlanta or Seattle or Pittsburgh, what have you. Let's say it happens. 2024. 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, boom, got it. Now you're trading the number 1 overall pick. Let's say you move down to number 2. You move down to number 2, you have 2 and 9. Let's say you get 3 first round picks for number one and a second. So now you have you have two 2024 firsts, and you have multiple seconds from Justin Fields and from the number one overall pick and your own, which you acquired for Montez Sweat. So it's a lot of fun to have those conversations about how many picks we'd have immediately going into 2024 if you draft Jaden Daniels number one overall, which is what Dan Orlovsky and a lot of other people in the media are talking about right now. Am I saying this is what I want to happen? Of course not. I would rather have Caleb Williams or a guy like Justin Fields. And yeah, I heard what Lance Briggs said. He said you got to rock out with a guy like Fields. I've heard Jay Cutler say you got to rock out with a guy like Fields. We've heard a lot of former Chicago Bears emphasize that they want Justin Fields to remain QB1. But in this scenario, if we traded number one and Justin Fields, let's say you have 2, 9, another first maybe in 2025. You're going to have several firsts in 2025, no doubt about it. Carolina's, Chicago's, and let's say Washington or New York for the sake of argument. But with that being said, let's break it down. How does this help the Bears extend their window into being Super Bowl caliber players? I think right now what you would do, if possible, you might have to trade up to 7. You might have to go from 9 to 7, because I don't believe he's going to be there at 9. But if he is, you could have the next LSU duo in the NFL have success. We've already seen Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase go to a Super Bowl with the Cincinnati Bengals and become one of the more dynamic 1-2 punches in all of football. You could do that again with the Chicago Bears right now. 2023 Heisman winner in college football, Jaden Daniels, played 5 seasons at Arizona State and LSU. He had 89 passing touchdowns and 20 interceptions, 12,750 passing yards, a 66.3 completion percentage, 3,312 yards rushing, and 35 rushing touchdowns. So over 110 combined touchdowns in his collegiate career. A 2023 Heisman, a one-time All-American. This is a guy that I believe in. I've been watching him for a long time. I've even said vocally, maybe the Bears don't end up with him, but I think he is going to be the best quarterback out of this year's draft class. And that's not just because of what he's been able to do in 2023 and winning a Heisman. That's a part of it, of course, but Caleb won a Heisman in 2022. So that's kind of inconsistent of me to say that. But with that being said, I just love the product in which he came from. We've seen what LSU quarterbacks and LSU talents have done as of late. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, the list goes on. We can do this all day about guys who have had success, and they were able to develop a Joe Burrow who didn't have success at Ohio State, who didn't get opportunities at Ohio State. And just like Jaden Daniels at Arizona State wasn't getting the most development I think they could have got out of him. I don't think they had the right personnel for a guy like that. And now coming into LSU, he has over 2,500 yards with Malik Nabers alone in 3 seasons together. Malik Nabers from 2021 to 2023 at LSU had 3,003 yards and 21 touchdowns. Receptions, I didn't have that listed, but I think at the end of the day, when you look at it for what it is, understanding that's 1,000-yard season average a year, 1,001 to be exact. But with that being said, man, that is a dynamic duo that if the Bears could potentially get Jaden Daniels at number 2 or number 3, wherever if you want to say Drake May is going number 2, I don't give a fuck about Drake May, respectfully. And if I'm wrong on that, I'll eat crow, but it is what it is. But with that being said, let's say you end up with Jaden Daniels and Malik Nabers. Now you're rocking out with your future wide receiver duo in DJ Moore and Malik Nabers. Tight end is going to be Cole Kmet. Jaden Daniels is your rookie QB starting the season. It'll be interesting to see what could potentially happen with that. And then obviously from the picks you acquire from whatever team takes number 1, you obviously have the Carolina Panthers picks as well. You have Montez Sweat from this year's second-round pick, and then maybe you get a second-round pick for Justin Fields as well. You can beef up that offensive line, bring in more Gottis, bring in more RBs, because truthfully, as much as I love Khalil Herbert and much as I love Roschon Johnson, I don't see them being the long-term answer as of now. Roschon can definitely take that leap. I think I'm already exited with Khalil Herbert. He just can't put together a full season. He either starts off strong and finishes slowly, or he starts off slow and finishes strong. So it is what it is. But I definitely think it's a reasonable conversation to say that the Bears could end up with Jaden Daniels. You know what I mean? You said, where can I watch the pod? You can watch the pod on YouTube. You can go on Mike on the Mic YouTube. Try to type in Mike on the Mic Bulls if you haven't already. If you if you try to type in Mike on the mic, I swear there's like three other ones who are all more qualified than me and have more viewers than me. But if you type in Mike on the mic, Bulls, Bears, Cubs, it'll definitely come up. We have interviews with Brennan Davis, et cetera, et cetera. You can check it out on Spotify or Anchor, but we haven't been posting on there as much. We've predominantly been on TikTok or YouTube. If you're new here, I appreciate you guys. Hit that follow button if you haven't already, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're watching on TikTok. But yeah, man, it's been interesting. It's been interesting. It's crazy combine. Of course, if you were to ask me today, hey, what are we doing? What should we do? I would trade back somehow, some way, find a way to get Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm rocking out with Justin Fields. That's just where I'm at. And that has nothing to do with Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields. It really doesn't. For me, here's where it's at. And I think this is, if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. And if I'm looking in both directions, I have the camera and I have the laptop. So I want this to be said very clearly. I like Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a good talent in the NFL. I just think he needs to be in the right system. I think he needs to have the right development and the right coaching staff. Do the Bears provide that? I have to see what Shane Waldron's able to do. But from what he's done with Geno, I think he's had success. And even Jared Goff, you know what I mean, when it's time with LA. But with that being said, let's break it down. I think when I look at the NFC North and I look at what guys have been able to do over the last 6-7 years, you need an X factor. You need a Devontae Adams. You need an Aaron Rodgers. You need a Justin Jefferson, a soon to be Jahmyr Gibbs. You know what I mean? Like guys like Aiden Hutchinson, guys like that. You know what I mean? A Khalil Mack. Those were X factors. Do the Bears on this current offense have an X factor? I'm not even talking about Justin Fields. If you want to say Justin Fields is an X factor, that's perfectly fine. I think that's a little premature. I think he's a superstar, but I don't think he's an X factor. But here's my thing. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a certified stud, an absolute monster. So when you look at what he's able to bring, a future Jamar Chase, a future Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson caliber player, you have to take a shot on that. That is your X factor. So if you could pair up the two, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cole Kmet, Justin Fields, the dual threat mobility from him. I mean, we've already seen Shane Waldron able to have success with that with Russell Wilson back in 2021, so we know it's possible. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot to be said there. And whatever running back it is, whether you go get one in free agency between Eckler, Jacobs, Henry, or Barkley, or maybe you rock out with Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert, or maybe you even draft a new running back. I have no idea. But I think you're fine. Your RB1 is pretty much Justin Fields. That's your first run option, just like with Baltimore, just like with the Eagles. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it's Byron Scott. It doesn't matter if it's Miles Sanders. It's going to be Jalen Hurts' time. And just like Gus Edwards and company, it does, or even Dalvin Cook, it doesn't matter. It's Lamar Jackson all day long. And even similar in Buffalo up until the new Cook has arrived. But with that being said, man, I think it's going to be interesting. I really do. You know what I mean? I would love for myself to have a guy like Jaden Daniels, even a guy like Caleb Williams. Now, like, I understand, like, a lot of people don't like Caleb, but whether it's the Pac-12 or not, you have to respect the fact that not only was he a 2022 Heisman winner, the man had over 10K yards in his collegiate career and over 100 total touchdowns with less than 10 interceptions. Like, yeah, I understand he never won a Pac-12 championship. Yeah, I understand the guy's not the greatest, but like, listen, I was so vocal on keeping Justin Fields that I think it kind of blinded me from Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, man, whether we end up with Caleb or whether we end up with Justin or Jaden, or to be honest with you, anybody but Drake May, I think you can sell me on the idea. You know what I mean? If we end up getting Drake May, and listen, this isn't a conversation about, oh, I don't want Drake May because Mitchell Trubisky was from North Carolina and he wore number 10 too. I don't want it to happen. It's not even like that. For me, when I evaluate Drake May, even if you don't even have to watch his tape, just watch his highlight reels. Just go on YouTube right now, type in Drake May 2023 highlight reels and watch how many times he throws touchdowns to wide receivers who don't have a DB covering them in the end zone. That's not happening 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10 in the NFL. You're looking at a guy who's scrambling, but also pausing. Once he takes that pause to make a throw, which is just going to be a floater into the end zone, one, a linebacker's reading that right off the rip. Whoever the mic is understanding that. Two, you're going to get laid out the second you stop running. You see Justin Fields, who's even on the run, and he gets laid out mid stride. You know what I mean? So I think at the collegiate level, especially playing for the Tar Heels and the guys that the caliber players and teams that they play against, yeah, sure, you can get away with stuff like that. But I mean, Drake May's tapes, I mean, they're not, if you read them at an NFL level and looking at it from the perspective of Roquan Smith is the linebacker going up against Drake May, plays like that aren't happening with Sneed or Jalen Johnson or guys like that. You know what I mean? Jalen Ramsey's of the world covering the wide receivers. There aren't going to be broken plays like that. It's just not happening. So Drake May, he has all the talent in the world, no doubt about it, but the way and the style of play in which he plays, I just don't see what he's been able to do at the collegiate level that's going to translate into the NFL. Now, if they could potentially, figure that out, like a Josh Allen at Wyoming, who was very kind of similar in the same way. You know what I mean? Josh is more erratic with the running, but and just throwing absolute bombs. But I think they're kind of similar in the same way of like, okay, you're not at the most collegiate school in developing young quarterbacks into the NFL at an elite level. But I think at the end of the day, if you go to a team like the New England Patriots, maybe they could figure it out. You know what I mean? They did more with less. You know what I mean? Tom Brady was a 6th round, 7th round pick for a reason. You go to a team like the San Francisco 49ers, like Brock Purdy, he's not the greatest in the world, not the greatest athlete, not the greatest player or decision maker, but you have the right guys around him to develop them into what you need them to be. But with that being said, I think there's a lot of different ways it can go, man. I think there's a lot of different ways. And a lot of people in Chicago believe that it's Marvin Harrison Jr. or bust. Zach says Marvin Harrison Jr. or nothing. We ride with Fields. I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. Like, my thing is this, and if anybody in the chat or anybody in the comments disagrees with me, that's perfectly okay. But I think, and if you have tape on these other guys, feel free to send it to me. I have no issue with checking out these guys. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I haven't seen something. Just shoot me a DM, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. It's the shy.kid. Definitely taking a look at whatever, and we'll continue to evaluate tape and overall highlights, what have you, whatever you guys want me to, throughout the offseason. You know what I mean? And before the draft. But with that being said, though, I don't need tape on Justin Fields. You know what I mean? And I've seen Fields have success. And I think the crazy thing is, like, watching the media understand that we went from we want Fields to we want Caleb in a span of 2.5 seconds once the season ended. Like, that doesn't make sense to me, because Caleb hasn't done anything since the season ended for our minds to change just as fast as they have. Someone said Bajan isn't gone, is he? I'm actually not quite sure what Bajan's contract looks like right now. He could be a free agent at the end of the year for all I know. Did somebody just sign a contract? Hold on. Hold on. Let me check. Let me check something really quick. Don't nobody go nowhere. I have to make sure nothing crazy just happened. Let's check it out. My boy Frankie's always letting me know the news. Um, wow. Wow, Matt Chapman signs with the San Francisco Giants. 3 years, $54 million with 2 opt-outs. Year 1, he gets $20 million. Year 2, he gets 18. Year 3, he gets 16. That is crazy. I don't know, like, this is just my buddy. This is my guy Frankie texting me this. So I don't know if this is confirmed. Wow. 3 years for Tyson. We have 3 years on Tyson Bagent's contract. He got all 4 years? I thought he was undrafted, so I wasn't sure. Yeah, Tyson Bagent was undrafted, so I'm not sure if he gets a 4-year deal or not on that. Let me see this comment real quick. By Ramirez. Would you do this trade for the Bears? Trade down twice for Washington to 2 first-round picks and a second, then Pat, same thing, making Bears have 3 firsts for the next 2 years in each draft. I mean, that's a legitimate conversation. You know what I mean? Like, that's something you have to entertain. And realistically speaking, if you put yourself in a situation, let's say you keep Justin Fields, you trade number 1, you get 2 first-round picks and more, and a second, let's say, for number 2 from the Commanders, right? And then you do number 2 for number 3, you get 2 firsts, maybe 1 first, and a second. Now you have several first-round picks in 2024 and 2025 with both Carolina, Chicago, Washington, and New England, and you still stay in the top 3 and can get Marvin Harrison Jr. If you could pull that off, I mean, Oh, but also okay, Ramirez said, "But also getting the LSU quarterback." So then okay, so in your conversation okay, I see what you're saying. So basically you're saying you get 2 firsts and a second for number 1, you get 2 firsts and a second for number 2, and then you draft Jaden Daniels number 3. And then you have number 9, which you can get Roma Dunze, or maybe you trade up to get Malik Neighbors to get that LSU connection between Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. That wouldn't be, I mean, that's not bad. I kind of like the idea more of getting Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, drafting a lineman or a pass rusher at 9, and keeping Justin Fields with all of those first round picks from several different teams. I mean, the Bears would just be absolutely insane. That's crazy. You know what I mean? That would be crazy. I don't know if New England would be willing to give that much just for number 2. Well, they're already at number 3, because I think at that point, whether it's Drake May or Jaden Daniels, they're pretty, I mean, not to say that those 2 are comparable, because I think Jaden Daniels is miles ahead and clears a guy like Drake May. But if you're New England, is it worth trading that much up? You know what I mean? For a guy who's not guaranteed, and nobody's guaranteed in this league. But that's just my personal opinion. Frankie, I actually, like 3 minutes ago, I broke that. I saw your message and I gave you some credit. I saw that, absolutely crazy, just like the Cody Bellinger deal. Matt Chapman to the San Francisco Giants. Shout out to him, bro, because God, the Giants have been trying to get people for years. Um, Cubs need to try to get Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell on short-term contracts. Need more starting pitching. Yeah, 100%. I think the Cubs are in a situation right now. Like, I love Caleb Killian from what he's been so far. I love Cade Horton, Ben Brown, and Jordan Wicks and company, but it wouldn't hurt. You know what I mean? Especially if it's similar to the Bellinger and Chapman deal, because they're all Boris clients, whether it's Montgomery or Snell. If there's a 1-year opt out, that's cool with me. You know what I mean? That's perfectly fine with me, because then you would only have Snell and or Monty for 1 year, and then by the time the season's over, guys like Cade Horton, Ben Brown, and others are going to be ready to take that major league step. So yeah, it is no problem for me. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, man. Appreciate you guys for being here. Appreciate you guys for always checking out the live. If you haven't already, hit that follow button or send this out to anybody who you think is in love with Chicago sports. We're going to be covering the NFL draft, combine, and so much more all the way up till April 27th or whenever it is. Obviously, Chicago Cubs content will be coming out every single day. We are going to be checking it out, talking Cubs baseball. It's going to be a lot of fun to break it down and talk more about what the Chicago Cubs are going to be able to do throughout spring training. But until then, I'll check you guys out later. Be safe.